My name's Josh. Welcome everybody. This is talk about a new product that we're launching recently, soon, called Redbird Pro. It's my baby. So you are going to get to hear me talk about my baby in probably more gruesome detail than you want to know. This isn't, we will do a little bit of product demo kind of stuff, so at least you can see it and get some concept of what it is. But this is more around why I think it was important to do and how we're actually doing it. It's really tailored for flight schools, flight instructors, that kind of thing. And I'll start off by saying this is a product that we're going to deliver to individual pilots. It's not something like all of our other products that go through the flight schools, right? We sell simulators to flight schools. We sell even gift. Generally, it goes through a flight school. This is a lot different. This is going direct to a pilot. And so the flight school, their role in it really is to provide a platform and offer simulators for students to work on. And my hope is that as we develop this out, it'll be a really good business generator for flight school because it will help bring pilots in and give them something to do. But let's talk a little bit about what this is. So let's set the stage. What's the number one cause of accidents in general aviation? Don't say it out loud, everybody already knows it, but let's look through. This is according to the FAA. They break it down, we'll say this right now, well, we'll say it in a second. Loss of control, flight and terrain, all this stuff. This is 2009 to 2016, the data, the more recent data looks very similar. Loss of control is still the #1 killer of pilots in GA. The things I highlighted in red, I would say conservatively, those are pilot related is the term they use, and I will say the FAA and the NTSB is, especially the FAA, is getting away from pilot error as an accident cause, and they hide it in these terms, right? And the NTSB is a little less concerned about the terminology, so the NTSB will say loss of control, proximate cause is loss of control, pilot related or pilot error. But so I would say the top two, that's a pilot issue pretty clearly. System component power plant, hey, that might be an actual non-pilot related thing. Some of those are probably pilot related, but not all of them. Fuel related, I would say #1, like that's the pilots. You know, bad pre-flight planning, whatever it is, that's their fault. And I'm a little, low altitude operations, I give them some credit. Maybe there's some situations where that's the accident cause, but it's not pilot related. So anyway, again, #1 cause of accidents in general aviation is pilots. 70 to 80% of pilots, of accidents are pilot related. 76% of fatal accidents over the last 10 years are pilot related. A lot of this data is coming out of our friends in the back, AOPA. The null report that ASI puts out, I read it every year. And what's really interesting, because of the way the accident record works, is you go and read the 2019, which is the most recent official published. They have some data from the earlier years, or for the most recent years, but the official 31st issue is from 2019. It's got the pilot-related accidents at 49%. They have a note that says this will change because not all of those accidents have gone through the full NTSB process. So you see that and you go, oh, that number's coming down. No. Go and look 5 years ago and it's 76%. In 5 years, that number in the 2019 report will be 76% because that's, as the NTSB releases accident causes, that's what drives that. Okay, so what's the best possible way to prevent accidents? More proficient pilots. The airlines have proven this. You look at the airline accident record, it's minuscule. You can say, well, they operate in a controlled environment, they have pre-programmed routes, they have a whole team supporting them, and that certainly helps. But even more, that means GA needs more proficient pilots. If we're letting them fly out, do whatever they want with no sort of safety net built around them. The problem, though, is general aviation pilots, most of them, especially the ones that are engaged, they know they need to be proficient, right? But they just don't have the time, money, and they don't have an infrastructure around to support that in that goal. And you talk about this. Very few of them have a goal. They don't have a plan. They don't take the time to do the things they need to do to stay proficient. If they do a proficiency flight, it's the things they're comfortable with, right? If you think about your average pilot says, oh man, it's been a month or 2 months since I've flown, I need to go out and get proficient again. They're gonna go out and do the landings they're comfortable with. They're gonna go do the maneuvers they're comfortable with. Maybe they'll fly across country or shoot an approach if they're an instrument pilot that they're comfortable with. They're not gonna push themselves beyond that comfort zone. And that comfort zone is where they kill themselves, right? When they think they're in their comfort zone, but they're actually out of it and they're unable to recognize it, that's controlled flight in terrain, loss of control. But those are the situations that create those accidents. And the biggest one is they use confidence, their personal confidence, as a stand-in for proficiency. If they feel confident in their flying, they feel like they're proficient. How many people in here think that that's a good mechanism? Your self-judgment, a good mechanism for an activity that can be fatal? It's not. It's just really not. And that's one of the things the airlines have done, is that those stage checks, those 6 months checks, they're graded. The airlines have these, and even the line-oriented flight training, the LOF program that they're put in after they get their ticket, they're put in, they're an FO, new FO, they'll have 6 months of LOF training in a lot of airlines now, at least 30 days, one cycle, where the captain is a specifically training captain who will grade them, provide feedback that goes in their file, and that counts. That feedback is super critical. So I read a book in the early stages of this called Developing and Mastering Proficiency. It's a very academic book. I don't suggest anybody read it, but it's based on, and it's not about flying. It's about other soft skills specifically. But the quote that really stands out to me is that you cannot achieve proficiency without a couple of things. They have to be challenged. They don't challenge themselves. They have to be challenged, and they have to have their levels assessed objectively. So I, in this thinking, came up with the idea of sort of a big picture, 4-quadrant model of proficiency. You have to have challenging training. You got to measure it. And one of the things about, if you ever read any pop psychology books, so like Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, humans respond best to instant feedback. If we're giving them feedback at the end of their training or something like that, they're less able to absorb it. And it actually applies to CFIs. One of the hard things about being one of the things that makes the airplane such a bad classroom, once you get past everything's moving and it's scary, once they get past that stage, and one of the things that makes an airplane a bad classroom is that they can't get really good instant feedback because they can't stop what they're doing, listen to the instructor, and then apply it. Right? They get like the instructor might be giving them feedback, but they're just not. They don't have enough RAM in their head to receive the feedback and operate the airplane at the same time. So that really the feedback comes at the end of the flight where it's less applicable. Simulators. We'll give that presentation later. All right, so instant feedback and then frequency and consistency. So any questions about sort of that sort of foundation? Makes sense? Anybody got anything? Okay. So our solution is a product called Redbird Pro that guides GA pilots to create and execute a proficiency plan. Hopefully it's low cost, easy to use, and we do a lot of the behavioral design stuff to engage them in the training, to keep them engaged and pushing in the training. Yeah.
Will you make the slides available?
They will be available, yeah.
I don't have to take these pictures then.
You do not need to take pictures. There's also a recording. The whole presentation will be on YouTube probably next week. So some of the key things we're doing, we're measuring the training, and we're tracking their training over time. We're giving them a goal and a training plan to reach that goal. The content is available, and we have simulator sessions that are simulator scenarios that are based on sort of real flights. Sometimes they start in the air, sometimes they start on the ground, but the scenarios, just like a real flight, end with a crash or a landing. Right? Whenever you take off, those are your two possible outcomes. That's how these work. We also do skill flights, which are, if you're familiar with GIFT, that product we make, it's more like a gift flight where it's tightly focused on a specific skill, and we're not really thinking about ADM in there. And then we use some gamification to try to push them along and develop good product, good habits. The basis of it is an iOS app, Android app is available, and then it connects to the simulator. We push scenarios, content over, launch flights in the simulator. They fly it, they get a grade, it goes right into the app, and it affects their pro score. And we're going to talk a little bit about these terms. Now, let's see if this technology works. You don't have to be, this is the, if you want to heckle, this is a great time to heckle. There we go, okay. So, if we haven't announced it yet, but the app is available in the App Store. We go download it right now if you search for Redbird Pro, and it's working. This isn't working, but the app is working. Okay, there we go. So this is my Pro Score account, and we're looking at a dashboard right here. We have a couple of things that are going on. Number one, the thing I want them to know the most is that my Pro Score is declining. I haven't been engaged enough. My score is going down over the last 30 days. Compared to 30 days ago, my score has gone down. I have a quick view at what that score is, and we'll talk some more about the Pro Score, but I'm graded on, and in my case, since I'm an instrument pilot, I'm graded on 8 key elements. And then I have, underneath that, I have components of those elements that all add up to a Pro Score. I have my training plan. This is the things I need to do in the simulator right now. Eventually there'll be some real flights in there, but right now it's in the simulator. These are the things that, based on my Pro Score, if I do these, I have the best chance of improving my proficiency. Then I have a reading list where I can read things and get articles to talk about specific topics. I can take a quiz, get a score. That all adds up into my Pro Score as well. And then when we look at our Pro Score, I have all the activity I've done. You know, it's been a couple of days, but so I took a quiz. I got 100% on it, good for me. Added 1.5 points to my Pro Score. I can see where I am on my components and how those affect me. So weather, for example, I've lost a bunch of points on weather, and we're going to talk about why I did. How I lost those points, but I lost a bunch of points on weather. I can see what, how much it affects my score, what's the point of it, etc. And these are all the components that make up my individual score as an instrument pilot. If you're not an instrument pilot, obviously you don't have the instrument approach procedures element. We can talk more about the actual app itself. That's not what this one is, but I just wanted to give you a little context here. Are there any questions about what's going on? Yeah.
So, one of the aspects of this Pro program would then be, if I haven't played with this thing in 2 months, my scores drop because from atrophy.
Yeah, okay. It is. And we're going to talk about knowledge and psychomotor skill decay because we use actual scientific models to model that out and model rust and knowledge decay, and then we apply it to your score.
So, sidebar. Are you guys talking to the insurance companies that they will give us a break?
Sidebar.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess kind of related to that, I'm an operator. I've got simulators. We're deploying this particular software. I get a call from an attorney and say one of the people that fly at your place was just in an accident, killed 3 people. We want all the training records going back, you know, to see how their score changed and developed. What kind of implications come with that? Liability on the operator?
Well, so this is not, you are not doing, they're training on themselves.
I understand.
So I don't know that outside of the normal liability as an operator that you have.
I'm just wondering what our obligation is to release that information.
So they would need to talk to us.
Yeah.
And then we would, and that's it's like, you know, I'm not, Todd's in the back, the CEO, that's his call about our specific data policy, but in general it would, you know.
Frankly, that's a court order.
Yeah, a court order is that. Like that's how most companies that have this kind of thing would treat it is, if there's a court order to release it, then we're obliged to. Otherwise, like an insurance company or something like that, or
They'd be working with you.
right, yeah. Like you would have, like, this data is the pilot's data,
Got it.
right? And it doesn't live with the flight school or anything like that.
That's my question.
Okay.
Hey Josh, perhaps I didn't form a question. This can be done in the sim without a flight instructor.
Yes.
The student does it on his own.
Yeah, it doesn't, in the sim without a flight instructor, can't be logged, but that's
Right.
not what this is about.
Right.
Is it available for, like, does it integrate with all the flight sims, fixed wing, and like the PTO for?
It does not, we don't have any helicopter content right now, but it's an interesting area to talk about.
So we'll integrate with industry stuff like FAST, for example, where you can.
We'll get there. Not yet. So if you were listening to Daniel's presentation, that picture of good is the enemy of great, that's where we are. This is the first version. We'll talk about that roadmap of where it's going to go, but there's a ton of potential here. We are a minimum viable product. It'll talk to a simulator, it'll launch a flight, it'll score it, it'll give you a pro score, but there's a lot of room for it to grow. Okay, any other questions? There'll be other opportunities to ask. Okay, so let's see. There we go. Okay, questions, got it. All right, so how does this fit that model I just made, right? So I said this is the model we want to do. How does this product fit it? We're providing training that pushes them, and we recommend stuff that they're not good at. We specifically, and we'll talk about that engine some, we specifically find the things in their weak areas, and we recommend it to them. And that they can find a way to get past that training list and fly other flights if they want to, but we're not going to present it to them. The stuff that's presented to them is the stuff that will affect improve their pro score the most. Like I said, we have simulator flights, real world AM, skill flights, and articles and quizzes. We're grading everything. The things that we can objectively measure, like landings, holding headings, holding courses, altitudes, that kind of stuff, we grade. And if you come from the GIFT background, this is a little bit of a different thing. In GIFT, we are grading flights as well, but we're grading them to the ACS. The FAA gives us a plus or minus 100 feet, right? And we grade it to that. In this, we're grading it based on that pilot's performance, right? So that your pro score is always relative. One of the reasons I don't show a number, there is a number that's generating that graph, but I don't show it because fundamentally I believe proficiency is not a 0 to 100 scale. What matters is your improvement. Are you getting better this day than you were 30 days ago? And I don't want to create a situation where somebody feels like a rusty pilot or somebody who is really not very good. I don't want to create a situation where this app just constantly tells them how bad they are, right? We want to be able to show you're improving, you're making progress. You may be a private pilot, and you certainly can't fly to ACS standards. There's plenty of those out there, but you're getting better. And that's one of the things we're focusing on. And we provide feedback. In that scenario, they get the score, but they also have the ability to watch a video that the instructor produced. By the way, we use featured, and there's more to the app story. We work with featured instructors to create the scenarios. So we work with them to develop the scenario, and then we have them do the videos, the pre-brief video and the post-brief video. This is part of that gamification behavioral design project, where the hope is that that people will come to like certain instructors, and they'll choose instructors that they like over time, that they want to take lessons, that they want to engage with and engage with their content. And there's other avenues where this platform could work with other opportunities to get that instructor involved in their training. So it's kind of like Fitbit meets Peloton, if you want to, for pilots. And we have two featured instructors in the room, Eric and Bob. And we're providing the scoring adjustments. We show that decaying, your score is decaying. We'll do push notifications, emails, that kind of stuff to keep them re-engaged. And we also, in addition to the challenging stuff, those articles and quizzes, some of those are real easy. and it's on purpose. So it's an easy win. It's 5 minutes, take a quiz, you get an extra point or whatever on your knowledge score, just as an easy win to keep you engaged. You know, we have to balance that. It can't be, there's this instructor, I forget his name, at Flight that I've flown with before, and he is, or not Flight, sorry, Simcom, and he's a great instructor, like, teaches you a lot, but it is a miserable experience, right? And you would not choose to do that if you really had a way to get around it. We don't want that. We want it to be engaging and have them feel like they can make progress. Questions on, any more questions? Okay, so that training plan, what we're doing, when you first sign up, you fill out a quick questionnaire where you self-grade your proficiency, right? And then we want you, there's a VFR and an IFR baseline flight where you go through, it's kind of like a flight review in an IPC, and then there's a bunch of questions associated with it. If you complete that, we get a really good idea of your score. If not, we just take your word for it. And then we adjust it as you do the content. But what happens is we generate a training plan, either from when you first sign up, you get a content recommendation, you do some activity, that feeds back into the system, it generates a pro score, and it feeds back into a system, and we regenerate a new training plan based on your performance on the stuff that happens in the app, so that it's always keeping up with you. What we do is when you get through about 60% of the content that's been recommended, we'll automatically regenerate a training plan for you, or you can manually do it as well. This is an example of the pro score. It's super complicated, and we don't need to go into it too much, but just to give you an idea, as an instructor, I'm taking high-level components, applying individual elements underneath those components, and the elements are either application, psychomotor skill, where they move a yoke, do a thing, and that has a different scoring model, or knowledge, something they'd have to know and keep in memory, which also has a different scoring scale. I weight that inside the element, and then I weight the individual elements. All the weightings are based on what kills pilots. Like, that's really, that list of things is the real driver of this. So ADM, instrument skills, loss of control type things are the things that are weighted more heavily. So you may get a really great pro score, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can be an airline pilot, right? Like, there are some different overlapping skills that aren't really applicable. We also do recency and frequency, which are either a bonus or a detriment to your pro score. So fly with an instructor, fly frequently, engage with the app frequently, you'll get a bonus, you'll get a bump. If it's been a long time, we'll take even more off of it outside of the knowledge score. So let's talk about those psychomotor scores versus knowledge. So we have things that we apply. Riding a bike, the phrase, you always can know how to, just like riding a bike, right? Once somebody has got their pilot's license or instrument rating, there are certain physical skills that are there. They're rusty, but they're there. It's not like your body, the way your system works, you don't just lose it if it's been 90 days since you've done the landing, right? It's there, it may be rusty. So to reference that, if let's say we have a 10, and it's that kind of skill, at 30 days, we'll drop that down a point. At 180 days, it gets dropped down a point. Now that decrement is applied evenly in fractions over time. But to recognize the fact that that is a different skill set that decays differently, we get a much lower decay level. Knowledge, on the other hand, drops like a rock, which we all know. You intuitively know that if you're not using that skill set, that memory of that knowledge, it will just fall off. And that's what happens here. After 8 days, so right away, you start losing points in your knowledge area. Yeah?
Where did you get these curves?
So there's the forgetting curve is an academic study that we pulled up that had some data to base that off of. And then the psychomotor one, there were two different studies that we looked at. They didn't have a curve. They didn't have it in that sort of clean data, so we had to do some interpretation. But the knowledge one, there's really good data on people's memory over time and be able to recall facts over time. Okay. This is mostly a joke. Okay. I'm not expecting you guys to do the math here, but the training plan essentially takes that pro score, it takes the content that we have available, and all that content has metadata about it, and the things that how it would affect the pro score. And we draw 2 lines. The lines that are, one is the training plan, one is the potential score that you could have, the potential pro score you could have if you got 100% on this piece of content. And we do that for everything that's available. And we choose the one, we rank order them, the ones that affect your pro score the most, where the lines are the most different in the right direction, are the ones we choose. And then we do collaborative filtering, which is another thing. Essentially, we do this for, this is an Amazon product recommender, my own. Notice I have kids, and my wife likes to cook. So this top one is our first tier. This is inspired by your purchases. These are the things that we think, because they match, they're actually looking for the closest lines. They're not looking for the lines that are furthest apart, they're looking for the closest lines. They match. That second one, that's collaborative filtering. That they're looking at my preferences and people like me that have bought other things. So what we do is we take the 10 things that are going to affect your score the most, and then once we get more data, we'll be able to do it better. We rank order them by the things that we think you'll like the most. Because we still want you to like this. It's going to be hard, but we don't want it to be miserable. Okay, questions? I know that's a lot, but yes.
Do you include AGC Communications as part of the training?
Not at this point. We do have the ability to connect to different ATC services, like Live ATC, Pilot Edge, and some others, but we don't have any connection right now for objective grading of it. And that's one of the things, like we want, when we build this out, when we add stuff into it, we want to be able to measure it, so it can affect the pro score. Yes?
So you gave a comparison of GIF versus the pro score here.
Mm-hmm.
GIF is weighted against ACS standards.
Right.
This is relative to your baseline score, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah.
First flight.
And it's a rolling 30-day baseline.
Got it. How transparent are you about those calculations? I saw your spreadsheet, but I couldn't see how things are weighted. In that.
So in the app, there's when you go into the component scores, it'll tell you how much this component is weighted, and then we'll publish the full model on our help center so that people can see. And we'll talk about this a little later. But one of the longer-term plans is I would like to be able, for the super engaged, right? The 5% of users that are really into this, I would like to give them the ability to, at least with sliders, tweak their pro score. Like, how much do they want to weight this within a range? And we're not going to make it so ADM is 0, right? That would be ineffective. But I would like, if they think they want more instrument stuff, then they could bump that up a little bit, and that could give us a little information.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I asked about the curves. Certainly you referenced what was available in academic literature, where you can generate your own.
Right.
So essentially, what we're looking to do is give you the ability to modify AI.
So let's talk briefly about any other questions, actually, before I move on from that. Roadmap. We have Cladoboy in the room. You're on here. So obviously, right now, this just talks to the simulator, which is a huge problem because very few flights happen in a simulator relative to the real thing. So we need to be able to bring the real thing in. At a minimum, we'll be able to allow somebody to manually put their flights in. And we'll give them some, just sort of, basically they'll self-grade at this point, like that's the best we can do. And we'll give them some recency and frequency benefit as well. We will build connections so if they have a 4-flight account or a Cladoboy account or pilot partner, they can automatically pull in their flights. So if it goes into 4-flight logbook, it'll show up in Redbird Pro and they'll get credit for it. If it goes into Cladoboy does some really cool stuff around grading flights. Cladoboy provides a grade. And if you have a Cladoboy account and Redbird Pro, once that gets connected, there will be, you will get really good data and really good performance data on that pilot. So the future is connecting these outside of the simulator. And that's not just getting the data from your flights into the app. It's also that training plan, which is, it's a mock-up, that's an old one. That training plan will start recommending flight profiles to you, real flight profiles. So it'll say maybe 9 or 8 of the tasks will be simulator-based tasks, but there will be 1 or 2 tasks in there that says, the next time you go to the airport and you want to do a proficiency flight, here are the things you should work on. And then they can self-grade their performance, or if they're proud of one, maybe we can pull that data in and tie it together. So that we can start generating real flight activities for them as well. One of the things you'll notice when you sign up for Redbird Pro is we ask you your home airport. Right now we don't use it for anything, but that question is specifically in there so that we can start later down the road recommending, why don't you fly the ILS 36 at this airport? It's 50 miles away from you. It's cross country, it's this approach. So there's, that's part of that plan so that we can start taking this from just the simulator to the whole experience the pilot has. And then the next one is, it's tricky. So right now this works on Redbirds, any Redbird, J through FMX, MCX, probably, it's probably break the PTO, I don't know.
We have an MCX.
Okay, so it'll work on an MCX. But we want it to be able to work on people's desktop simulators at home. And this would be the first, and what that means by work on, that means launch content we create, flights that we create, observe their performance in that flight, and generate a score, a grade, and give it to them. Obviously, a home simulator is not as capable as an MCX, right? Just like a TD is not as capable as an MCX. And there are things that you just won't be able to do. But there are actually, I read this study last night, 2 nights ago. There is some good data from before the FAA produced the AATD spec, and it was part of what they used to justify it around pilots' performance on home PCs versus FTDs. And if a pilot is using a home PC and an FTD by themselves, there is essentially no difference when they show up to the flight school as far as their level of preparation. The difference is if they're using an FTD with an instructor, they're getting better training, right? But we think there's value in putting it out pushing it as close to the user as we can. That doesn't mean, I know this is the wrong audience to put this slide up, by the way, if you guys have flight schools, but we will certainly, there's definitely, it's more beneficial for them to be in the sim, and we'll continue to push that, and we'll continue to push the real flights as well. But that opens up the audience immensely when we take it outside of just the Redbird hardware. Any questions?
So I'm trying to understand, with an AATD that isn't a Redbird, you can still incorporate this software. I don't understand the integration with X.
So that's for home, people have X-Plane at home, on their home PCs. And they use like SATEC controllers and stuff like that, or our controllers.
So we'll coordinate with.
Yeah, but not a PSC. Right? If you had a PSC, we're not going to let you fly Redbird.
So I see.
But if you have a home sim,
that's your decision.
That's our decision.
I see. Yeah.
Actually, that would be my decision.
That would be his decision, and it makes sense. We're not, but we will. Hey, you want to sell your PFC to us, and we'll give you a well, not give you.
Wait a minute. Let's talk about that.
We'll exchange for it. We'll do a trade-in, trade-up program. We can get you set. Questions? Any questions on that? There's a ton of room here. Obviously, the insurance companies, like you said, those are very easy to get started with. There's the connection to the real world. There's connection to ATC. There's the ability to grade decision making at a more objective level. Right now, if you land some of these flights, you get, there's a few branches, but it's really hard to objectively grade a pilot's decision, right? Because there are situations in these flights where the right answer is not take off. So how do you grade a flight where they just don't, they say end? So refining that and refining our ability to grade on ADM is a huge part of the development that goes forward. And there's a ton of runway here. Redbird Pro, available in a local app store near you.
Wings.
And wings, yeah. Wings fast, the wings, thank you, Todd, that's a good one. We have started talking to the wings program people. I think they're sort of trying to figure out what they're doing, honestly, with the whole program, but I don't know that for a fact, but we will try to integrate wings with this as well. And on the wings and fast topic, we have the sort of the placeholder on the back end for live events like migration. So, or like an IMC clubs, VMC clubs meeting, or a fast safety team meeting, where you attend that meeting, especially if it's like a fast meeting where the FAA, it's all published, we can essentially scrape it, pull metadata out of it, and score it. You attend that meeting, that'll give you points. And so we can create more of a, we want to be able to capture anywhere where that pilot is engaging with aviation and bring it into the app and give them credit for it.
Is the content limited to US airports only?
Currently it is limited to US airports only. And that's the other thing. Right now it's pretty much all single engine piston stuff, but we'll expand it into there'll be some Cirrus specific things, talking about the chutes, and that'll be, when we talk about adjusting the AI, the training plan, that'll be the kind of thing that we'll implement. So if they want Cirrus, they're a Cirrus pilot, they want Cirrus content, we'll promote that higher in their training plan. You can fly any of the flights on a Cirrus or a multi-engine, but they're not specifically tailored for that, the unique things about that aircraft. Anything else?
Cost, pricing?
Oh yeah, it's $15.99 a month for VFR and $19.99 a month for IFR. And that's the individual user subscribes to that and pays off their Apple or Google Play account. Good question.
Any IFR?
Yeah, IFR is both VFR and IFR.
And you have a point system as you go through this, some sort of rewards?
So there is a badging. There is badging built into it. It's not implemented yet, but there is
Down the line.
Down the line, and so we have this. On the content side, we have a concept. It's not in the app now. We have a concept of a collection. So as we build out content around specific themes, like let's say thunderstorms, we create a collection, a thunderstorms collection, flying in thunderstorms collection. That's scenarios, skills, articles, quizzes, and that's essentially a pre-built, custom training plan for that topic. And they can go into that and complete all of those things. They'll get badging on it, that kind of engagement stuff.
When you reference the pricing for like a college or university where people rotating every 2 to 4 years, do you have like institutional level pricing? Where
we do not right now. So this is really based, like the model is direct-to-consumer program. In the flight training world, where you're really working on pilot's licenses, certificates, and ratings, talk to us about gift. We can certainly do some institutional pricing on that. But for this is really for this pilot's proficiency over time.
The official I work with has indicated that DPEs are going to start looking more and more at risk mitigation specifics and scenarios built around specific risk mitigation. Is that, since you said some of the scenarios are that you have in there is don't go fly. So I'm assuming risk mitigation must be threaded throughout your...
It is.
Is it marked, or is it just under the ADM umbrella?
It's under the ADM umbrella. We run into a little bit of a challenge here in that for it to be a good test of their skills, we can't telegraph it too much, right? So when they choose the flight, the scenario, they'll know that there's some decisions that have to be made. We don't want to say, you don't want to give them any hint. There's as few as hint as possible of what those decisions are and where they need to be made and what the right answer is. But I would say more than don't go fly. The real risk mitigation strategies are, don't do what we told you to do. So if we say, fly this approach into this airport, and you get in there and go, this is crazy. Well, what would you do in the real thing? This flight ends with a crash or a landing, so where are you landing? That's the risk mitigation, where they say, instead of, like, we'll grade you the whole way through. We'll give you a score for that ILS. But if you say, I'm not doing that, and you go to a different airport, you're gonna get a much better ADM score than trying to force it into some place where you really shouldn't be.
To build on that, and I bet Bob would agree with this, when you build these scenarios, it's so difficult not to tip our hand, because when we're in the airplane and we say, there's a deer on the runway, that's code for go around. Like, you basically told them to go around. You didn't say it, but, oh, I'm gonna hit the deer. Like, nobody wants to, I mean, you know, there's only one possible outcome. And so the interesting thing about this to me is, even on a stage check, and of course, or a check ride, no matter how much we try to make those activities scenario-based, we still end up assessing individual maneuvers. We can do the best we can to make it one holistic flight, but you can't. You have to evaluate specific maneuvers and tasks. In this, there is no outcome except crash or land.
Right.
So you have to follow this all the way through to completion instead of breaking. And so I think that's the strength of Pro over a conventional, just traditional, go out to the airport, get with an instructor, and go practice stalls, which is still valuable. But the benefit of this is you must go through to completion. If you just give up, you will crash.
Yeah.
And it's in a sim and you don't actually die. But if you just get overwhelmed and you don't stop and get out of that situation and divert, you will lose control of the airplane, which obviously we don't want them to do in flight training. I don't want to auger into the ground to teach them a lesson.
We would never let them go that far.
We can't let them go that far. And so this, we can actually do inadvertent icing. Instead of just saying, don't fly into ice, we can actually ice the airplane up and have them try to figure out how to get out of that situation.
And even the finer point, we can create a decision point where they can choose to get into ice or not, and then show them the outcome of that choice. Yeah.
So I thought it was neat that you guys are selecting home airport of choice so that you can build local scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
How are you solving for variation and people's preference for aircraft?
So in the simulator scenarios, they, right now, like I said, it's all really single engine land. Any Redbird aircraft will fly that. Any sim will fly. You can plug in an SR-22 panel, launch one of these, and it'll pull up an SR-22 and fly. Right now, we don't have content that's specifically targeted at that aircraft model, but that will be developed and we'll create. That's one of those things that it changes over the course of somebody's flying. So I'm not as concerned about asking that and honestly, it's further down the line than the recommending real flights. So we'll have them, it'll probably be part of the tailoring their pro score. They'll be able to say, oh, I want Cirrus stuff, or oh, I want more multi-engine stuff. And we'll promote that to their preference. Yeah.
So I taught last summer at AirVenture in the Proficiency Center.
Mm-hmm.
And both, as you know, VFR and IFR scenarios. Did you incorporate all those or some of those?
No, so those scenarios aren't in here yet, but
are they coming?
Billy's right there.
Because those are really excellent.
Yeah, we can chat. The guy's right there.
All right.
All right.
And one more.
Yeah.
So if my simulator is attached to the internet, that's all we need? Doesn't need anything else?
Yeah. So
software upgrade?
Right. So it does need. Yeah. Let's talk about it. Right now, it needs the most recent version of Navigator to run, and it needs an internet connection. The need for the internet connection is going to go away pretty quick. We're changing the way. Right now, it uses the code, like Redbird Connect, the code that shows up on the sim to connect. But I actually have a version on my phone that we're testing that uses MDNS, where it will connect to a sim on a local network that doesn't need to be connected to the internet. And if you know Navigator, it has a local network. And so there are schools that don't plug them into the internet all the time. So we'll be able to connect with Redbird Pro over MDNS to it, and you'll be able to download the flight to your device. That's one of the advantages of the native app, is you'll be able to download everything you need to the app. When it walks into the simulator room, the simulator doesn't even need to know about the scenario. And it will connect with MDNS the sim will pull it off of the app, off the iPad, and run it locally.
And when do you anticipate that's going to?
The MDNS stuff is probably a month with good testing. The downloading would probably be another month after that. That's the first. So the like right now priorities are that MDNS and downloading and being able to log, manually log event like real aircraft flights through a form, and then we'll move from that into connecting to ForFlight compatible.
Back to the pricing. Is there any free trial? And number two,
Yeah.
is there any discount on annual payments?
So it's a 30-day free trial. I will tell you right now, the app stores are just awful. If you are the producer of the app, they're very difficult to work with. We do have an annual plan with pricing. It is not available in the App Store, but we may do that. And we will launch shortly a web site where you can buy a subscription to Redbird Pro directly to us, and it will sync into the app stores. And
That's a good idea.
there will be discounts there. There will never be discounts inside the app stores. They're taking 30%.
They take
off the top.
30%, exactly.
All right, I don't want to keep anybody from lunch. I will stay around if you have more questions. Come get me. But there's lunch in the main room. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.